Fact, Mazda indeed makes some great driver's cars. Another fact, you and I already drove the 2019 Mazda 3. Yet another fact, I already gave you an episode with Coleman and Ken and geeked out about that car. But I kind of sandbagged you because the car we drove is all-wheel drive, and we didn't drive it in bad weather. So today, you and I are not only going to drive it on snow, but we're also going to meet someone far cooler than Ken and Coleman put together.
MotoMan doesn't know this yet, but he's about to drive this car in the snow with the guy that invented the GVC, so that'll be neat, I think. Yeah, hopefully everyone survives.
So we have an unusual special guest. This is Umetsu-san.
Yes, right.
So he's cooler than Dave Coleman because he's an engineer, a neuroscientist, and a designer all in one. Is that correct?
Yes.
And he's also the man that invented GVC. But you are here for a specific reason because you got a special computer.
Yes.
That's like a special on-off switch, isn't it?
Yeah. This is controlling the PCM, the powertrain control module.
So that is not optional on a Mazda 3. One cannot get you in that computer as an option.
It's very expensive.
So no GVC.
No GVC.
Coming into turn a little hot. Okay, there's a little bit of slip. A little bit of power there. I'm gonna try the stop sign here and see how it goes. Because we're on an incline. So now the idea is we gotta send some power to the rear wheels, correct?
Yeah.
Up to what speed does the power go to the rear wheels in this car?
I mean, full speed range.
So completely full speed?
Yeah.
So it doesn't really shut it off?
Full time we control the rear torque. Depends on your operation.
You do notice a little bit more pitch, squat, dive, and roll without it. You definitely notice it.
So all anybody wants to know is what's going on with this torsion beam in the back of a Mazda 3, right? Aren't we all about multi-link suspensions, blah, blah, blah. I get it. You drove a car with a torsion beam once, it sucked. That wasn't the reason why. The way we came to a torsion beam suspension on this car is kind of unexpected and roundabout, so let me tell you a story. We're trying to figure out the best way to do the ride handling balance of a car. And typically you look at ride by how much of the energy coming in from the road you dissipate before it gets to people in the car. We started looking at from a different angle at how comfortable the people were in the car and trying to measure that objectively. We look at how well they can balance. We look at specifically how much is their head moving around on top of their neck. That's kind of an indicator of subconsciously how well their balance center is dealing with the motions that they're feeling from the car. You would expect, and we did expect, that softer cars would have less balance problems with people in the car. Turns out that wasn't the case. The cars that had simpler inputs were the ones that worked better. So a car that kind of hits a bump, we noticed the driver's head would move a bit. And that came from the fact that there were two different inputs coming into the driver, one right after the other. What would happen is you'd hit the bump first and the relatively hard tire that we would use to get good steering response would stop. And the relatively soft bushings that we use to isolate the little sharp road inputs would let the car keep going while the tire stopped. And so there'd be this little deceleration. And down in your subconscious, you start balancing against that deceleration. And then finally the wheel goes up over the bump. And that second input, while you're responding to the first input, for some reason your brain's too dumb to deal with those two things at once and your head kind of bobs around. It's a very subtle thing. Over a long period of time, it ends up sort of making you more fatigued. The cars where the driver's head just stayed balanced and they seemed more comfortable had a very simple input. One diagonal input, the deceleration and the vertical input were combined into one. So we started working on synchronizing the suspension better so that it more gradually fed the input up into the suspension, it followed the kinematics properly, and you just get one clean diagonal input, right? It turns out that the cleaner you make the input, the firmer you can make the car, the harder that ride can be, and the driver will still be comfortable. So that is how we ended up with this torsion beam here. So we've retuned all the geometry to be really straight and honest. In the front, there is no roll steer at all. As the body rolls, the tire keeps pointing exactly where the driver's pointing it. There's very little compliance steer. We cut about 60% of the compliance steer out of the front. In the back, there's almost no compliance steer at all. Part of the trick with this torsion beam is there's no passive steering stuff going on. That's one of the advantages we thought to a multi-link, is we could make it do all these things. But by getting rid of that, we made a much cleaner, more direct steering feel. Traditionally, torsion beams are known for having a toe-out response under hard cornering, and that's because there are two trailing arms connected with a beam up at the front, and that beam will bend a little bit and let the tires toe out. And then you'll angle the bushings a certain way and make them soft, and that'll make it toe back in, and you try to cancel the toe out and the toe in. We tried to get away from all of that by just stiffening up the beam quite a bit so it doesn't bend as much. So end result, clean ride, less body motion, less roll, less pitching, really controlled, really comfortable, and really direct steering response. I'm sure you still don't believe me. Just go drive one.
Okay, so now we're gonna do GVC back on.
Yes. I turned GBC on.
Bist du fertig?
I hope.
Here we go. He hopes. Okay, so now more power. It's a little bit of a hotter lap. That's almost double. Brake into the turn. Still feel a little slip, but less weight transfer. Less lean.
So when you steer quickly, then GBC controls the torque a little bit to make a vehicle turn smoothly. It's the effect of the road shifting.
For some reason, MotoMan thinks our all-wheel drive system shuts off at 40 miles an hour. Where do you even get that? So, new iActive all-wheel drive in the Mazda 3. It's not always driving all four wheels. It's always figuring out what it should do and doing the appropriate thing at every speed. So the way it figures it out is it's running a vehicle dynamics model in software. Basically, it's running a full vehicle simulation video game inside the powertrain control module. And it's using your steering inputs, the vehicle speed, the G sensors, the yaw sensors, to figure out how much load is on each tire. And then it's sending torque to the appropriate tire based on the sort of friction circle model. So if you got a bunch of cornering load on one corner, you can't put a bunch of torque to that corner or else you're gonna run out of grip, right? That's the whole idea of a friction circle. So what that means is if you're starting out on a hill, it's gonna see that incline and see there's a bunch more load on the rear tires than on the front. It's gonna send a bunch of torque to the back. If you're accelerating really hard, it's gonna send more torque to the back. If you get off the gas, it's gonna send it all to the front because that's where the load is. Maybe where he got confused is the fact that if you're at light cruise, we shift completely 100% to the front now to save fuel. We used to leave about 2% torque to the rear in those conditions. That was causing some unnecessary drag, but we did that to make the response really quick. As soon as we decided we wanted some rear torque, we want it there in about 100 milliseconds at most. So what we did with this car to make it able to run 100% front when we want it to, is we actually overdrive the rear wheels. So the rear driveline is going about 1% faster than the front. So at the clutch that engages the rear wheels, there's a little bit of speed differential. And that means because there's a little bit of backlash in the drivetrain that would have caused some sort of inconsistent time lag between our signal and getting the torque. Because they're going different speeds, as soon as you engage that clutch, it takes up the backlash and we immediately get the torque delivery we want. So that let us do the part that confused MotoMan. Actually, if you're above about 70 miles an hour, we start feeding torque to the back, even in a straight line, because that helps stabilize the car and give you better high-speed stability.
So what we're trying to do now is demonstrate a lane change procedure?
Yes.
And what are we doing in the setting? Are we doing GVC on or GVC off?
Off and on. Please make a quick lane change on the way to uphill. I mean, both uphill, downhill. Please try.
Now, I'd
this
like to
on.
point out, this is the man that not only engineered the system, he tested it and did testing with Porsches, Mercedes, RX-7s, all sorts of good stuff. And your own personal cars. And motorcycles.
Yeah.
This guy is beyond, he's cooler than Dave. Okay, so lane change, and this is GVC on.
So we wanted to bring the human element to the painting process on the Mazda 3 as well. And one of the ways we did that is we actually looked at the way the painter would paint the car in a spray booth. And then we digitized them and we mimicked the actual motions of the way he lays the paint on the car to the actual production factory. What that does is two things. One is it allows us to get the surface quality that the designer and the modeler intended by the way the paint goes on the surface. And two, it allows us to lay the special paint, the Soul Red Crystal and the Machine Gray, in such a way that the metallic flakes lay a certain way. What that does, it allows the highlights of the color to be really bright and the shadows of the color to be really dark. So when the light hits the top surface, it explodes, and when there's no light on the bottom surface, it almost goes black. And that, again, gives this surface a life and a quality to it that we feel gives it a very human touch.
So now GVC is off.
Yes, sir.
So please try the lane change. Okay.
And for the avoidance of doubt, does it turn off the traction control, or does the traction control still stay on?
Stay on.
Okay, so all we're doing is the torque vectoring. That's what we're switching on and off.
G-vectoring.
Okay, sir. Ready? It's not as noticeable, the difference here, doing the lane change, as it is on the course over there. You notice it a little bit, but I don't think we were going high enough of a speed to notice the difference.
MotoMan said something about the seats being hard like an old Mercedes. I guess that's a good thing. Here's the deal. Here's what we're trying to do with the seats. We're looking at the whole package of making the car feel right to the people inside and making it easy to balance. The first thing you do to make the car feel like it's moving naturally is you put your upper body in a kind of a standing posture, because that's how we're designed to balance when things are moving. We're not designed to sit on things that move. That means you get your back sort of into that S shape. You kind of rotate your pelvis upright, and you don't slouch. And so we made the seat bottom, the flat part where you're going to slouch away from it, really short, so you can't slouch away. We put a thigh support adjuster in there to kind of lift up and support your legs, and also make it uphill if you were to slouch, and so it's easier just to slide back and stay against the backrest. And we made the foam firmer, like a Mercedes, I guess, an old Mercedes.
Yeah, I guess your steering angle was reduced with this system, and strike, and more stable.
Umoto-san has significant driving experience. Like, this guy can shoe. He is you are a test driver on the Nürburgring.
Yes.
So you're qualified to say, did I change my inputs between GVC on and GVC off?
You are so nice driver, I think. So
He's being very kind.
You're unsubconsciously you are correcting the vehicle, right?
Mhm.
So such kind of the subconscious correction on steering operation might be distraction on driving, right?
I see.
So this kind of the correction, slight correction, which a experienced driver like you can do subconsciously, makes
So it's counterintuitive to what the system is doing.
yeah,
understand.
that's a point, I think. So it's not obvious, but it's very slight. But this
So it's meant
is-
for the bell curve, the majority of drivers.
right.
I understand.
Yeah, that's a point.
I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the surface on the Mazda 3 5-door. Unfortunately, Dave Coleman grabbed it, so I've got the sedan here, but I can still talk a little bit about the process. So when we actually stamp sheet metal, we spend a lot of time hand surfacing the sheet metal. Normally it's done computerized with a buffing wheel, but we actually go in by hand and do it so that we can capture the surfaces that the designer and the clay modeler intended when they actually form the car in clay. For the 5-door, it's really unique in the segment and in most of the industry in that there's no hard brakes in the surface. So from the top of the C-pillar to the cant rail all the way down to the wheel opening, it's one beautiful flowing surface. The only thing you get on the one side, on the driver's side, is the fuel door, but otherwise it's just a beautiful clean surface. So the big challenge for us in stamping this large piece is to do it without any breaks or creases or shoulders, to get this large piece of steel to capture the form that the designer and the modeler intended. So we do that a lot of different ways. One is the stamping engineers spent time in developing the tooling, the heat and the temperature and the pressure that they put into the tool to stamp the material. We wanted to use as thin a sheet metal as possible to keep the car lightweight, and that's where the challenge is the thinner the piece, the more it stretches and the more deformation you get in the surface.
I'm gonna try this again because apparently I am a failure at the course.
I guess you can drive faster, 25.
25.
Yeah.
25 and really make an aggressive lane change.
Just like emergency avoidance.
Okay, let's try it. 25 miles an hour.
Now system is on.
The system's on. Okay, here we go.
Let's make counterclockwise.
Well, that was fun. You and I are going to close out this unique tech review with a round of your favorite game in mind, the options game, but it's going to be special because I have not one, but two Monronnies. With that, let's dive right in, and I think we go with this one here. 2019 Mazda 3 hatchback with premium package, all-wheel drive, finished in polymetal gray mica, the better color, and a red leather interior for $28,900. To that, we add the cargo mat of $90. Then we add the illuminated door sill trim plates, actually very cool, for $425. Then we add the frameless auto dim mirror for $275. Something tells me Coleman has his hands in the cookie jar for that. Then the navigation SD card, not navigation, but the SD card for the navigation is $450. Then we add the wireless charging pad for an additional $275. Come on guys, throw me a bone. $275 on an already $30,000 car? Then we add the delivery processing handling fee of $920, brings us to $31,335. Now, I kind of sandbagged you here because this is not really two different cars. Yes, it is two different cars, but it's exactly the same car, but one of them, this one, has a manual transmission, so it's $1,400 cheaper for the better transmission. Now, in all seriousness, I do need to leave you with this. You're probably thinking at a base price of about 28 grand, 29 grand, you're thinking that's way more than its competition. You'd actually be wrong because Mazda, they have a bit of a secret weapon here, and the secret weapon is they don't make a base model. Yeah, the Corolla we drove and the Hyundais and Kias, they're in the high teens to start, but they also have models that have all the stuff in them that are about this price. The Toyota's kind of spot on, the Kias and the Hyundais are a little bit cheaper, but around the same price. So really, they're just offering 2 trim levels instead of 3 trim levels. Do you agree, not agree, why or why not? Let me know in the comments below or via our social media. MotoManTV, one word, MotoManTV on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And until I see you next time, be später.